What is up, everybody? Welcome into the first look at the Week 11 waiver wire ads. It was an ugly day of football. The Chiefs are showing some signs of life, which is more than what the waivers can say. So, with that out of the way, Kev, go ahead. Why don't you dive into it? Tell the folks about the quarterbacks you were looking at for Week 11 that are on waivers.
Yeah, I think this one for me is pretty easy. I'm actually last week's waiver ads were pretty terrible, right? This week though looks much better. So this week I think there's kind of two guys that kind of really lead the way for me in terms of guys who I really want to add, and I think actually both of them could be viable long-term ads. And the first one is Justin Fields. He is coming off bye this week, but he scored previously to the bye, scored back-to-back 20 fantasy point performances. They get Baltimore this week. They've allowed the 13th most fantasy points on the season to quarterbacks. Fields also has 300-plus air yards in 3 of the last 4 games, so they're really starting to open things up, allowing him to throw the ball more. And his remaining schedule is also great. They get Baltimore at Detroit, Arizona at Green Bay, Minnesota at Seattle, and the Giants to close out the season. So I actually think Justin Fields is more than just a one-week ad. I think he's somebody you can look for multiple weeks in a row. We know that the following week they get at Detroit, which is Thursday night, or that's obviously Thanksgiving. And so Justin Fields, is finally starting to kind of come into his own a little bit. We even saw signs of life from guys like Allen Robinson in the last game against Pittsburgh. So I love Justin Fields this week. And then the next one is Cam Newton. We know he got signed. He actually played today a little bit, only rostered in 16% of leagues. They get Washington football team this week. He completed 3 of 4 passes for 8 yards and a score. He also rushed 3 times for 14 yards and a touchdown. He did play very limited. Obviously they just had some packages for him, but moving forward, he is going to be the starting quarterback of this team. And he just kind of brings a different dynamic that, we just don't really see from the other quarterbacks they have on that roster. And, we know that he is very viable on the ground, somebody that's going to get a lot of rushing touchdowns. And so that's always going to make him a viable option on a week-to-week basis. I know last year wasn't great for him whenever he played for the Patriots, but this is kind of him returning home. There's a lot of good weapons here with Christian McCaffrey, who had a bit of a scare, but he looks to be okay. But Christian McCaffrey, obviously DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson even came to life a little bit, Terrace Marshall. So there's a lot of weapons here for Cam Newton. So I actually like Cam Newton as well. Somebody else that you could add. They get a great matchup against Washington football team. Like I said, Washington ranks 31st in pass DVOA and allows the most fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season. Third up, is Tua Tagovailoa, 23% rostered, gets the Jets this week. He only scored 12.3, but if you remember, he only played about half of that game against Baltimore because Jacoby Brissett started. He came in relief. The Jets are 30th in pass DVOA and have allowed the 15th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So I do like Tua this week as a streaming option. Tyrod Taylor is kind of a little bit thin, but they are coming off another team that was on bye this week, played pretty poorly week 9 against the Dolphins, but gets a Titans defense that allows the 7th most fantasy points to quarterbacks and will likely be playing from negative game script, which should lead to more opportunities for Taylor and the Texas offense to put up some fantasy points. So Tyrod Taylor, a little bit desperate, but I don't mind playing him. And then Daniel Jones, roster in 30% of leagues, week 10 bye. If you look at Danny Dimes, he should get most of, if not all of his weapons back this week. It's one of the rare times this year that he's actually going to have everybody available to him. So, this is probably going to be the healthiest we've seen this offense. Saquon is expected to return this week. Kadarius Toney gets another week to kind of, I know he was nursing a little bit of an ankle. Kenny Galladay will be back, and Sterling Shepard could be back as well. So, this offense is going to be fully healthy going up against a defense that, just kind of got beat today against the Washington football team. Again, I think a lot of people weren't expecting performance. A lot of us weren't expecting, but Daniel Jones has been a viable option so far this year. So he's another guy I think you could go with, plays Monday night against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, definitely some better options here at quarterback for this week. Running back, not great, Bob. I mean, obviously, we have to pay attention to Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon. If he happens to be available for whatever reason, he is the priority ad for this week. But I think he's only available in like 40% of ESPN leagues. So probably only like 8 teams, maybe some 10-team leagues where he's still out there. Add him. Aaron Jones potentially dealing with a sprained MCL. Patrick Taylor Jr. was the only other running back to see a snap, and he only saw 3. So it looks like it's going to be the AJ Dillon show. Just makes me so sad that Kylan Hill is out on IR, because I would have, this would have been the chance for us to see him. But anyway, I digress. Moving on, the Eagles running back situation is interesting. I don't really know what to make of it. I would lean Jordan Howard just because he has been the guy who's seen the most touches over the past 3 weeks since Miles Sanders has been out. But all these guys are still pretty widely available as well. I think going forward, they're still going to run with a committee, some sort of committee approach, right? Like, I don't think Miles Sanders is going to come back and all of a sudden be looking at 18 carries a game, 20 carries a game on his own. Like, nothing is going to be left for these other running backs. Like I said, I would lean Howard. I'm not going out and dropping those guys. If you pick them up over the past couple of weeks, I'm not dropping them yet. I want to see how this plays out. Howard would be the guy that I would go with. But he and Boston Scott are sitting around the same rostership percentage. So definitely pay attention to that whenever Miles Sanders returns. Ramondre Stevenson, with Damian Harrison out with a concussion, Stevenson really stepped up in a big way. Had over 100 total yards, like 114, 2 touchdowns. He absolutely needs to be stashed, and I was kind of surprised that he's only rostered in 9.9% of ESPN leagues, which was I really don't get why that number is so low, especially whenever we knew that Damian Harris was going to be out and Stevenson can clear concussion protocol on Saturday night. I don't think that Harris is just going to be taking a back seat, but I do think that this leash is going to be short with Damian Harris going forward. And if he were to suffer another injury or anything like that, it's going to be wheels up for Stevenson. Brandon Bolden was still involved a little bit, but it was obviously Stevenson, 20 carries, and then chipped in a handful of catches as well. And that's something that Harris has not done. So maybe Stevenson kind of becomes that guy as well and kind of cuts into Brandon Bolden's target share moving forward. So Stevenson definitely worth the ad and the stash. Another stash I think you can look at, Deonta Foreman. Still going to be splitting time with AP and McNichols, so he's not a priority ad, not a must add or anything like that. But in these desperate RB streets, he's definitely worth a pickup. He only played 1 more snap than AP did today, but saw 3 more carries. And then last week too, if you look at the box score, he was more effective than Adrian Peterson was, even though AP was the one who found the end zone. So Deonta Foreman is another guy. Then just some other guys to throw out here quickly. Latavius Murray, his rostership number keeps dropping with every game that he misses. But Devonta Freeman only has that one game where he looked really good. So I think whenever Murray does make his way back from injury, he can kind of take over that 1A role from Freeman and become that, like I said, that 60-40 kind of guy in this backfield. So again, if you're desperate, deeper leagues, I think Latavius Murray is worth a snag. You mentioned CMC looks like he's going to be okay. The fact that he went to the tent because of that hamstring again definitely worries me. Another deep ad here, Amir Abdullah. He was getting more involved basically after being, coming off the street right before CMC came back. And, definitely at the very least, he is going to be the pass catching back here for the Panthers, because we saw whenever it was, catch up time, 2-minute drills. That was, my God, his name is escaping me right now. Ronnie Smith. Yes. Ronnie Smith was the one who was doing that. He has since, I think he's been released, and now Amir Abdullah has taken over that, and they were trying to get him more involved as well. And then in the game today, Abdullah and Hubbard split snaps evenly at 16, but Amir Abdullah ran 7 routes to Hubbard's 2. Hubbard saw no targets. Amir Abdullah had 4, and I think Hubbard had 10 carries to Amir Abdullah's 9. So if, like I said, deeper leagues, if you're desperate, I think Amir Abdullah is a sneaky ad here that I don't think a lot of people are going to go to. And even with the Rams being on bye next week, Sony Michel's roster number is the lowest that I've seen it all year. It's sitting down under 27% on ESPN leagues. Not a lot of great options this week. There's definitely some interesting ones, but might not be, we're getting to the point of the season where we typically don't look at, getting handcuffs or especially your own handcuffs. But if somebody like Sony Michel, with the upside he has in that offense, with Darrell Henderson's injury history as well, I think he makes some sense to stash here. And then just the last two, I know Matt Breida, was making some noise today, scored twice, 6 touches, 50 yards. He only had 8 snaps, and this was the first time he was even active on that roster since week 2. So don't go crazy. Maybe 14, 16 leagues you could look to add him, but don't look at the box score, see what he did, and think that all of a sudden he's going to be worth an ad. Like I said, only had 8 snaps. Singletary and Zach Moss still dominated the snaps there. Maybe he grows into a little bit more of a role because it's not like Singletary and Zach Moss have been, particularly effective or efficient with their touches. But don't go crazy this week on waivers. Definitely worth something to monitor. And the last thing to monitor is Jeff Wilson, obviously playing tomorrow night. JaMycal Hasty has been ruled out, obviously going to open things up for Wilson. He was active last week. I'm not sure that he even – I know he definitely didn't register any opportunities, didn't have a carry or a target. I'm not sure how many snaps he saw, if any at all. And we know what Wilson has done in this offense. He's been productive in this offense before. It's still going to be Elijah Mitchell's backfield, but I'm going to be paying attention to how Wilson is used tomorrow night just to see if he's worth picking up and kind of being that number 2 behind Eli.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is I think Wayne Gallman would be interesting as well. He had 15 carries today. He actually had more carries than Cordell Patterson and Mike Davis combined. And so, 15 carries for him. Mike Davis is obviously droppable, should not be rostered anymore. He's pretty much done. I think it's smart for them to see what they got in Wayne Gallman, who's a guy they signed. And so Wayne Gallman, 15 carries today. He is going to be hard to trust, but I think he is at least worth a speculative ad. We kind of saw him last year in limited opportunities, kind of produce RB2 type numbers when he was with the Giants. So we've seen it before. And for me, I think Ramondre Stevenson is, I would have him as a priority ad because I think he could end up taking over this backfield completely. He looks really good. He brings that dimension. That's something that Damian Harris doesn't have, and that's as a pass catcher. So I don't know. I think this could be a big time move for him. And so I do like Ramondre Stevenson. And then as far as that, Miles Sanders, we said this morning, Miles Sanders is expected back this week, and so he should be back. We'll see how this plays out. But other than that, let's move on to wide receivers. Rashod Bateman, what is going on? Rashod Bateman, add Rashod Bateman if he's available in your league. Add him. I cannot fathom why he's still only rostered in 50% of Yahoo leagues, but he is, and he should be rostered in 100% of leagues, to be honest with you, unless it's like a 4-team league or something like that. Like Rashod Bateman deserves to be rostered in all 10-team leagues and above. I'm sure this will be the last week that he's available, but he definitely is worth an ad. 6 receptions on 8 targets for 80 yards, for 14 fantasy points this week against the Dolphins. He was second in targets behind only Marquise Brown with 18.6% target share. Over the last 2 weeks, he has 11 receptions on 16 targets, 132 receiving yards for 24.2 PPR points. So add Rashod Bateman. Next up, Darnell Mooney. I don't know why he wasn't rostered more. He came off a really big performance, but see, he's only rostered in 45% of leagues. Week 9, he had three receptions on 6 targets, 41 yards and a touchdown. He also had 1 carry for 15 yards and 2 touchdowns for 20 fantasy points. On the season, he has a 25% target share with a 32% market share of the air yards and 11.3 fantasy points per game. So add Darnell Mooney. Absolutely add Darnell Mooney. As far as the rest of the wide receivers go, Kadarius Toney, I don't think that he's like a must add, but I do think that he is like an upside add because with everybody healthy, we're going to see how everything plays out here. But they are coming off bye, so he should be about as healthy as he's been all year. He doesn't. We've seen his ceiling. He had that game where he had 30 fantasy points, and he has a favorable schedule moving forward. The Giants have the 7th easiest schedule for wide receivers moving forward, which also plays into Kenny Golladay as well, who's only rostered like 45% of leagues as well. So both of those guys, I think, are definite adds, especially in 12-team leagues and above. Elijah Moore, 51% at least 6 targets in 4 straight weeks, double-digit fantasy points in all 4 of those weeks, hauled in 3 of 6, 44 yards at a score. That did come in garbage time, but Corey Davis did return today and led the team in targets with 7. Zach Wilson is also expected to return next week, so Moore is more of a boomer bust. Wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 going forward. Van Jefferson, Robert Woods, which we know is out for the season with the torn ACL, will resume operating as the team's number 3 wide receiver with OBJ now on deck. He will be a useful wide receiver 4 in most weeks. He's seeing about a 15% target share. On the season, he has 27 receptions, 433 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Rostered about 57% of leagues. So if he's out there, I don't mind adding him as well. Laviska Shenault, I guess on the positive, he saw 8 targets today. Bad news, it results in 3 catches for 15 yards. Shenault I think he could be a decent add if the Jazz could ever figure out how to utilize him. The dude's super explosive, but much like we saw with somebody like James Robinson earlier in the year, they just don't know how to use this guy. It makes absolutely no sense. He's the most explosive player they have on that offense, and they continue to not figure out how to ways to use him. Because you have guys like who I have ahead of him, Jamal fucking Agnew, the former cornerback, is out producing him every week. And I'm surprised Jamal Agnew's only rostered 9% of leagues. He rushed 3 times today for 79 yards and a touchdown. Also targeted 5 times. He's averaging 7 targets per game, and he makes for a kind of a decent flex option going forward if he's going to continue to see this kind of opportunities. He's only rostered 9% of leagues. After that, we have the Saints wide receivers. I don't know. I think you could pick one. I think they're all decent flex options if you're desperate on most weeks. Callaway's rostered 34% of leagues. He's the most rostered. 2 receptions, 37 yards, and a score. He's now scored in back-to-back week, but he's like a low ceiling wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. Traquan Smith, 4 receptions on 7 targets, 44 yards, and a 19% target share. Double-digit fantasy points in 2 of the last 3 weeks. 11 targets over the last 2 weeks as well. Again, don't really love it, but he's only rostered in 3% of leagues. And Deontay Harris, 19% rostered, 3 receptions on 4 targets for 84 yards. I think all these guys are decent options because they don't have like a certified alpha wide receiver. All these guys are going to see targets. And on certain game scripts, I think he makes some sense. The rest of the guys after that, we have Bryan Edwards, who just scored a touchdown for the Raiders, I believe. And he's a deep league stash. Somebody that a 12-team league and above, I do like rostering. Terrace Marshall, the same thing, especially with Cam Newton. If this offense can really kind of take a step forward, Terrace Marshall could see a bump in target share. He seems like the perfect type of wide receiver that Cam Newton loves. Think of Jacoby Myers, right? Last year, whenever he was with the Patriots, and guys like that. He likes those big body wide receivers. And so I think Terrace Marshall could be an interesting add. Sammy Watkins, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Deshaun Jackson, all deep league guys. And I think those are the wide receivers we can look at.
All right, let's wrap it up with the tight ends. I'm sure Kev just went, got a little chubby seeing the guy who's up on the screen right now. But let's kick things off with Logan Thomas. He is sitting around that 50% rostership mark. We obviously still need him to be activated. He's still sitting on IR. But Ricky Seals-Jones left today's game with a hip injury, so that would obviously open things way up for Thomas if RSJ were to miss time. I was kind of thinking that when Logan came back, they might run some more 2 tight end sets. But if, like I said, if Ricky Seals-Jones misses time, it's going to be, go back to 100% Logan Thomas. The guy that I was referencing to, if you're checking this out on podcast and cannot see the screen, and that is Sir Dan Arnold. So shout out to Kev. Shout out to the donkey, Urban Meyer, who traded away a first-round corner for Dan Arnold. But Dan Arnold has been he has 60 or more yards in 3 straight games and 60 or more yards in 4 of his last 5. He's heavily targeted as well, so this isn't a case of him just going out and getting 2 for 60, 3 for 60. He is averaging 7.4 targets over his last 5 as well. So Dan Arnold would be my number 1 ad here, and not just a streaming option. I think he's someone who you could rock with for the rest of the year. If you have one of those, back end tight end ones who are just easily replaceable. I like Dan Arnold. Another guy, Tyler Conklin. He only had 3 catches for 11 yards today. Did squeak out 2 touchdowns out of that. But the positive note here, and especially going forward, is the fact that he ran 31 routes, which is only behind Thielen and Jefferson, who had 38 and 37 respectively. And then coming into this game, Conklin did have a 3-game stretch of 71, 57, and 45 yards. So he's a solid add as well. Kevin, you're talking about Justin Fields in the beginning, kind of opening things up for this Bears offense. And on the receiving end of that was Cole Kmet. And if you watch that game against Pittsburgh, they were also using him deeper down the field as well. Kmet had 8 targets in that last game, 6 catches, and 87 yards. And he's been someone who we've kind of hemmed and hawed about, throughout the season. But hopefully now with Fields, it seems like he's getting more comfortable. We saw a lot of people who are way smarter than I am when it comes to analyzing the quarterback position, talking about going through his reads and his progressions and all that, which is obviously a great sign for him and for this offense as well. Last guy just to mention here quickly. Don't look now, but Adam Troutman has a snap share of 80% or higher in his last 4 games. And he's also been seeing more passing game involvement across those each weeks as well. So going back to that 4th game, he went from 3 targets to 6 to 7 targets, and then he had 6 today. He's not going to have a huge high ceiling in this offense, but if you're in deeper leagues, if you're, for whatever reason, a crazy kind of like 2 tight end league or one where you're getting the tight end premium bump, he's worth a look. But the other guys clearly above him. But Adam Troutman, especially once we've seen his involvement in this offense kind of creep up after Trevor Siemian took over at quarterback. So something to pay attention to. The other guys clearly above him, Dan Arnold being the number 1 ad there at tight end.
Yeah, I agree. I'd love to see Dan Arnold continue to get praise. So Dan Arnold, he is the man, and love to see it. So
yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up for the week 11 waiver ads. We're going to switch up the schedule a little bit this week. We're going to be going live on Friday instead of Wednesday, and I think the rankings are going to come out a day or so later as well. Just with how much has been going on during the year this year, with all the craziness and the injuries and COVID and everything else, we've just been, it sucks to put out. We try to get that information out to you guys earlier in the week so you can be more prepared. And then it just ends up it does us no good. It does you guys no good because, we're leaving out guys like Dearness Johnson and, James Washington and guys like that. So we appreciate you guys, like I said, switching up the schedule a little bit.
Picked up Steven Starr. J-Rob actually didn't turn out to be.
Yeah, he was okay.
Play.
Yeah, he was. J-Rob was.
I mean,
okay.
He was like 18, 19 fantasy points. Not obviously as good as what Stevenson was, but he ended up being like a total bust. So that's good.
Yeah, we just want to let you guys know we are going to switch up the schedule and everything, just so that way we can try and help you guys out as much as possible as well and give you guys the best information. So going live on Friday instead of Wednesday. We'll still have the Sunday show as well, and DFS and the props will be regularly scheduled throughout the week. So join the Discord. The link is going to be in the description. If you guys have any questions, you can ask us throughout the week over there. And hopefully you get a dub this week, and we are on to week 11.